Now, if you do return our country back to a gold standard, that's constitutional money. And so you could see that there's really no longer a need to outsource the money printing function and the monetary policy to a third party like the Fed. It could be reabsorbed by the U.S. Treasury and managed in a more constitutional republic type of a way, which could be very profound for individual liberty and freedom if done properly.
There is a challenge that is coming from digital currencies such as blockchain technologies.
So I think it's important to share that anything can be tokenized.
All the money.
I like the idea of a gold standard. I mean, it could be used in a very cryptocurrency way.
Very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think. We will be all at a level playing field.
Hey, welcome to the show. It is our third episode of Escape Velocity. And we're going to cover what happened this week in geopolitics, blockchain news, and the future of money. How you doing today, Jimmy?
I'm doing well, Molly. How's it going?
It's going great. We had another eventful week full of kind of strange, fortuitous news. We don't have a lot of celebratory news. Hopefully that will come soon. You ready to get started?
I am ready to get started. So our first story we're going to address is kind of a continuation of our BRICS discussion from last week. So everyone will recall last week we were talking about the leaked audio where President Xi and Putin were filmed outside of their meeting place talking about changes that were coming, that they were going to be driving, that had not occurred in over 100 years. And that led us to a discussion about BRICS generally. And for everybody who isn't familiar with BRICS at this point in time, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Well, we've had more developments this week. And one of the most notable things is that Saudi Arabia has become a dialogue partner in something called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO. They join several other partners in this, what's described as a political security and trade alliance. It includes China, obviously. It includes Russia and India, but also Pakistan and 4 other Central Asian countries as kind of primary members. There are 4 what they call observing members, of one of which is Iran. So this is another, like we had last week, the kind of China brokering that relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which led to this commitment to reopen embassies in Syria as well. So you have kind of this, the Muslim world starting to have peace and come together in the Middle East, being brokered by China, typically a role that the United States had played in the past. And then there's apparently 9 dialogue partners, which now include Saudi Arabia, but also included Qatar and Turkey. So you couple this with the statements made by the Kenyan president also this week that we're going to see big changes in the use of the dollar internationally. We remind ourselves that Russia and China are already trading in the yuan. And that Russia has moved to make its currency be a gold-backed currency. And they're talking, Putin's obviously come out and talking about a new reserve currency as well. So we're seeing a just continued coalescing globally of these various countries and other countries starting to join the BRICS currency bloc.
And then we also saw that France, which is a significant country in that it's not really outside of the sort of Western establishment. France paid for natural gas in yuan this week. So what do you think of the significance of a major European country trading for energy outside the dollar system?
Well, it's extremely significant because, with the moves that Saudi Arabia has been making, and now you have Western countries starting to trade in currencies, especially the Chinese yuan, not using the dollar, which had been set, it's called the petrodollar, right? It had been set for global trade in energy use. or energy, acquisition. So that effectively signifies that the dollar's dominance as the world reserve currency, the petrodollar, at least a fiat arrangement, is very close to being at an end.
And that kind of ties into, I think, the second thing I want to talk about today, which is called Operation Sandman or Project Sandman. I've sort of seen it found under both names. And it's a little bit difficult to verify because it's a little bit of a conspiracy of sorts, and that 100+ nations around the world have made an agreement, according to this theory, that they're all going to pull out of the dollar system sort of simultaneously to sort of have a flip the switch type moment to transition to a new type of monetary system. Mm-hmm. It's hard to find verifiable sources. I mean, obviously what the Kenyan president said on video reminded a lot of people of that. I first heard about Project Sandman last year and looked for a lot of sort of sources on it. And it was difficult to find, but it seems like we're seeing more and more data points indicate that there is likely some kind of agreement with many countries, not necessarily 100+, that they're out of the dollar system. And what do you think that's going to mean for people around the world, including Americans, Jimmy?
Yeah. Excellent question. So we've known about this concept for a while. We came across some documents that were associated with the Great Currency Reset or the Global Currency Reset back in 2020 that talked about this type of an event occurring, all for the purpose of moving the global economy back to an asset-backed gold type standard for currencies. Obviously, with the BRICS coalescing around an asset-backed currency, what we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks, you can see that it's been kind of these one-off countries breaking off from the West and the dollar-denominated system or the euro-denominated system, and starting to use other currencies for trade. That's a significant thing. If this Operation Sandman, Project Sandman thing were to occur, it can be very devastating in the early innings for the United States and the life that we've known for certainly the past 50 years since Richard Nixon, took us off the gold standard and put us into the petrodollar system. You could see our assets initially start to hyperinflate and then crash. So I would fully expect to see, as a result, if this were to occur, kind of a major stock market crash, housing prices dramatically drop, all securities, probably stocks and bonds, to be negatively impacted. And I think ultimately what has to occur is something that we've speculated on for a number of years now, is that the United States and the West will also have to return to a gold-backed standard. So you see some period of time, it'll be like a trying to catch the falling knife type situation, which is not good. And I think it's going to be, not to promote fear or anything. I think in the initial days of this occurring, it could be quite frightening for people who invest money and, are on a day-to-day, engaging in the Forex markets and engaged in global trade and trading amongst countries, because, you could be in a situation like we import all these goods from all these other countries. We don't really make that much in the U.S. anymore. And then all of a sudden we can't use the dollar to be buying goods from China or Latin America and these other places. So until we stabilize our system, I think it'll be very scary, but that stabilization could occur very quickly. There's already a bill in the House to return the dollar back to the gold standard, which has huge ramifications. If you have a gold denominated currency again, and by the way, when I talk about gold denominated, I'm really just referring to an asset-backed standard. It could be gold, oil and gas, silver. You could have a lot of different commodities, but we're talking about an asset-backed currency that is kind of locked and tied to this basket of commodities. and not something that just, free floats in the air based on the whims of traders in Forex markets. But, if you do return our country back to a gold standard, that's constitutional money. And so you could see that there's really no longer a need to outsource the money printing function and the monetary policy to a third party like the Fed. It could be reabsorbed by the U.S. Treasury and managed in a more constitutional republic type of a way, which could be, very profound for individual liberty and freedom if done properly.
I think we're going to see a couple of incredible upsides probably after this dark period of transition. Namely, the first one is a lot of assets that are driven by the loan market, like housing and cars. The perceived value of those assets has gone up dramatically in the last 15 years. And it's priced a lot of people out of those assets. And it's also put people into this perpetual debt system where it's almost unrealistic for a lot of people to actually pay off a mortgage. Like you spend your entire life paying off this house, unless you sort of worked out some arrangement for yourself. And so if the price of a lot of these assets like cars and houses, I mean, imagine if you couldn't if the loan thing just went away hypothetically, and you had to pay for them in assets that you owned, the prices would drop substantially because same thing with education. How many kids would be able to spend $100,000 a year on college if that had to be paid for in cash? Very few. So the universities would have to price correct and make this service, this upper education service, be more affordable. Otherwise, they're going to go out of business. They wouldn't have enough clients. So I think we're going to see some return of some very overvalued assets to more reasonable prices that I think would make those available to a much larger group of people. And then secondly, I think we're going to see a dramatic and amazing resurgence of manufacturing at the local level and even just within the United States as a whole. Right now we are very blessed with getting cheap ingredients, components, and supplies from a lot of East Asian countries like China. And it's difficult to compete as a manufacturer of those components in the United States because they're just made so inexpensively in China. But if that changed and all of a sudden those components were substantially more expensive, the U.S. manufacturers would source those components more locally. And even in things like the food supply chain, if you know anything about nutrition, like the sooner you consume like a vegetable, the better. So this idea that we're buying all these fruits and vegetables and shipping them around the globe because it's kind of cheaper to do that, that might just go away. And we might see, again, a resurgence of manufacturing, in this case, like food production at the local level, which would be great for farmers and producers of products in the United States. I also think it'll be better for us because the quality of those things might go up in a great way.
So it could be a real ushering in of a new golden era for even the American economy. But
I'm pretty optimistic.
This price correction time period that we're talking about, which will be the bumpy ride. And, this is obvious to us, and, who are we? We're just a couple of people, right? So, this has got to be obvious to, people who are actually in the Treasury, in the Fed Reserve meeting. They're just not talking about it, but that this has to have been planned for. This ties into CBDCs and CBDC distribution. It could be, or it could have been, that the plan was to use this event that everyone knew was going to occur at some point in time. It was just a logical conclusion, but to basically get in front of that event and try to once again, kind of put us into a debt slavery matrix system by this, programmable digital money. And it may be that the non-national currencies, virtual currencies I'm talking about now, so your Bitcoins, your Ethereums and your XRPs, things like that, become very, very valuable because, you can use them in a more free way. So it's interesting. The government's cracking down on crypto. They're trying to corral everything into certain very specific legacy money managers or legacy banks. At the same time that this, global initiative is occurring to de-dollarize and basically send the greenbacks home to the United States.
And the government's attempt to make prohibiting crypto seem like it's for our protection, I feel like that is not working as an argument. I don't see many people involved in the crypto space have any faith or confidence that the US government's policies are for our benefit in any way.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think they're smart to be skeptical. I think we've been sold a lot of things, over the past 20 years, certainly since 9/11 with the Patriot Act and things like that. I think we were going to talk a little bit about this TikTok thing that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's going on now, the potential ban in TikTok, and then basically what they have on the other side of that, this use of VPNs and things like that. But this is just further government encroachment into your freedoms. And I think if you're a real American, you're very right to be very skeptical and very concerned about this continued encroachment onto our freedoms and our rights.
Seems like there's a lot of change coming. There's going to be some great things, but the current sort of what we'll call establishment that has benefited and profited from this fiat money system, it's pretty clear they're resistant. Like they had a good thing going and they're like, we don't really want to change. We like to be able to print money. We like to be able to have this sort of financial services world that doesn't really add a tremendous amount of value to society, but they are immensely profitable by skimming off the sort of percentages of this kind of fiat system. So that seems like that's going to go away.
Yeah, and I understand why there would be resistance. It's very natural if you've controlled the game to have that type of resistance if it's moving away from you. And I think, we have to acknowledge the system basically worked for a long time for America. I think it worked for our benefit. We became, the dominant superpower because of it. And we've had a lot of great growth and in human expansion, capital expansion, technological expansion occur in this country because of the system that was in place. But it's probably about at least 15 years past its expiration date. I think, the 2008 financial crisis really was probably the end. And, they just opened up the money spigot from there, printing into oblivion. And then, we were probably due to fail in 2019 and certainly 2020. And that's when, the world was suddenly hit by, the great pandemic. And everyone was sent home and basically they grind the world economy to a halt, setting the stage for, what is starting to occur now. Don't want to really address the corruption in the system and the bad things that have been going on and the bad profiteering, whether that be cartels or human trafficking or all that stuff. But that is really what has rotted, the system away are the things like that. And to be rid of that as humanity and be able to kind of march forward with our freedoms and reconnecting with our sovereign source, it could be a very, very amazing time globally. We don't need this far-flung military industrial complex that just, makes up and invents and goes and invades countries, whether it be for weapons of mass destruction or because, we perceive someone, stepped over a boundary that, we didn't like or whatever. I understand the resistance. I understand that it worked. The system worked well for a number of decades, but, this too shall come to an end. And I believe that humanity will be better for it once we have the medicine go down.
I don't want to estimate the value of the corruption, though, and especially over the last 15 or so years, we've, at least in the United States, there's been quite a few leaders who have not made decisions in the best interests of Americans. And so this idea of the decline, I don't think it just happened on its own. It does, in hindsight, look manufactured and orchestrated to serve a greater agenda.
That's right. I think hopefully in the coming weeks and maybe month, we're going to start to better understand the competing forces of good and evil, and how, my belief at this point is that the natural way of things was leading towards this positive outcome that you and I are both optimistic about once we're through this transitionary period. I think that the leaders that you reference, who have not been making not been making policies and decisions based on what's in the best interest of the citizen of Americans. I think they knew that this was coming as well, and they've attempted to front run the change and come out with their own marketing programs and their own policies, their own vaccine agendas, their own passport agendas and things like that about how you and all these things are get it to the very fundamental human nature of what it means to be a free person. So you're right. It can't. Yeah, go ahead.
One reason I'm optimistic is a great many of us are aware of the corruption now, where 10 years ago, I think a very, very tiny percentage of people were aware and felt powerless to do anything. And so as we've gone through, especially the last 3 years, this sort of great awakening, to kind of learn about the dark and nefarious activities that some of these, quote, leaders have engaged in, I feel like we've crossed a point of no return. And this might be just me wanting that to happen and, living in my own echo chamber of people aware of this stuff. But to me, it feels like we can't go back to this oblivious society, trusting blindly our leaders to make these decisions. And I think the BRICS nations are similar. They're not going to play this game of this cartel who have been making decisions using the fiat dollar as their tool to control and implement their policy. And I think the rest of the world is saying, we're done. Like, let's move on to a better, fairer system. And I feel like we're right at this sort of cusp. We're in the waiting room, waiting to board our plane as this plane takes off to take us to the next era of humanity, actually.
Yeah. I think maybe the way we ought to see it is that we're like first class passengers on the plane, and we got on early, and we've been sitting around drinking cocktails and stuff and waiting for the plane to take off, while everybody else gets boarded. But no, your comments resonate with me, and I'm sure they're going to resonate with everybody. And you're right. There has been a mass awakening of humanity. People see things better now for what they are. It's been painful. It's been painful learning that in a lot of cases, the institutions and the people that we really trusted, that we believed in the what they had on their website, our good friends at the SEC, for example, we believe that they lived by those mission statements and duties that they had set on themselves, to learn that they've been kind of taking money from the backside and then selectively prosecuting certain things and not others, which really ties into this whole this TikTok ban. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this week there was quite a bit of attention on a new proposed bill referred to as the Restrict Act, and the media coverage around it painted this picture that TikTok is this nefarious app that is sending all of this data about Americans to the CCP, and they're going to be doing all these terrible things. So in an effort to protect us, the government loves to come in and be a protector, they are going to potentially ban TikTok and put some other mechanisms in place to keep us even safe from future dangerous apps. However, I do think that this is a Trojan horse, in that there are a couple of nuances in the bill that are very terrifying. Namely, if they're, first of all, I think they're going to give Biden the authority to create a group, like a team or whatever, that is going to manage this. They're not elected. There will be no oversight from any of us within this sort of committee. And this committee can name other apps as being dangerous, like for national security purposes. And if anyone in the United States is caught trying to access one of these apps, like a TikTok, but there could be more in the future, via a VPN, the penalties are very severe, like potentially between $250K and $1 million fine and 20 years in prison. Like, people who murder people go to prison for 20 years. The idea that you could use an app via a VPN to watch some videos of people dancing and go to jail for 20 years for that is crazy. So clearly that makes no sense. It's really not about TikTok. However, there are quite a few crypto exchanges that are not allowed in the United States that you could access via a VPN. And that would make essentially engaging in a DeFi exchange that is offshore now a criminal fine. I mean, like a jail. Like, that is pretty serious. So I think that it could have devastating effects far broader than TikTok itself. So I think the idea that it's a TikTok bill is intended to distract us from the incredible overreach that this would bring into all of our lives. I really hope it doesn't pass.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think
I
about
agree. That, you know, you shot me that clip of someone kind of taking us through kind of the what's written and not what's being kind of propagated by the media. And it's very, very scary stuff. And it really is starting to crystallize the value of data and access to data. You know, it's just data is seeming to become the new real value and new real money in the world. And the fact that our, you know, government is starting to discuss, these are the types of penalties, right, that were discussed, or not discussed, that were put forward by FDR in connection with the gold confiscation back in the 30s, which basically put us into the debt system. So this is total, complete control of, you know, what you can think and what you can, that's very, very scary stuff. I think should be resisted by whatever it takes. And I mean, whether that be, you know, we have to basically opt out of the system, or, you know, what that's going to entail, I don't know. But the fact that any American congressperson can, with a straight face, talk about implementing this type of stuff after the disaster of what the Patriot Act became, and how, you know, that was weaponized against us with, you know, then propaganda by the media. You know, the U.S. Congress is treading a very, very bad line here.
It's such a departure, I think, from the original intent of the federal government, which was to sort of take care of a couple problems that needed to be centralized, like roads and, you know, having some kind of a military. This idea that now they're going to police what types of websites we could visit is, to me, so far away from the original purpose of any government, including especially the federal government. Gotten so big.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's, you know, it's basically eaten the, so, you know, initially we were free people who basically set up a contract with this federal government thing to, as you say, do these very limited services and make sure that in the context of those things being provided, it was fair and people could, you know, basically have the freedoms that they had fought to basically obtain from a prior, you know, patriarch situation, right? So it seems like we've kind of come full circle, and we've been kind of lifted up off the land into this federal system, and within that system, We're not free people with rights that are, our rights come from our creator. They're part of being alive. They're unalienable, right? So it's only when we contract those away by taking the benefits of a system that is looking to completely collapse on us and control us. We're going to have to do something about that.
And I even grew up believing that the Constitution kind of granted me these rights, and that the Constitution was there to ensure that I had these rights. It creates this perception that the government has that authority to just determine what your rights are, which I no longer believe. And I think we've been sold quite a story that is not really true or in our best interest around these rights.
Yeah. And, all you have to see is that the congresspersons then exempt themselves from the application of all these laws, right? So it truly is a rules for thee, not for me type situation where with, the insider trading, the backroom deals, getting paid by lobbyists to basically bring this stuff in. It's a racket. It's a criminal cartel at this point in time. And, I think that's why you're seeing these other countries start to opt out of the system and go a different direction.
I agree. All right, we had one more story. Alibaba. What's going on
Alibaba.
with that?
Yeah. So big news, and this is important to kind of, bring the context full circle here. So the news was that Alibaba is going to basically split itself into 6 different companies. It's got a value right now of roughly $257 billion. And just, so take everybody back in time. Certainly if you're in the XRP community, you're familiar with the fact that Alibaba was taken public here in 2014, I believe, 2015. And it was Bill Hinman and Jay Clayton who would become Jay Clayton, the chairman, and Bill Hinman, the director of corporation finance, during kind of the initial wave of digital assets starting to hit the SEC and the ICO craze and all that kind of stuff. So they were the 2 kind of lead lawyers on that IPO for Alibaba. But Bill Hinman's partner at Simpson Thacher, Leming Chen, became the general counsel of what is now Ant Group or Ant Financial, which has the Alipay, which all during this time that, we've been, burdened by the lawsuit against Ripple, Alipay has been proliferating throughout the United States. If you go to any Walgreens or CVS and look at the little digital thing that you pay with, there's an Alipay thing there. So they've been able to lay payment rails and stuff like that otherwise probably would have been done by an American company. So this is very interesting. Alibaba hit its all-time high back in 2020, in October of 2020, which was just 2 months before the lawsuit dropped. It was in the midst of the pandemic, obviously. It got hit in China with some antitrust violations back in November of 2021. And then in January of this year, Jack Ma finally relinquished his control over Ant Group. And so Ant Financial's kind of, out there and is its own thing now. But it's all, very incestuous how this, all kind of leads back, how it ties into cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about Alibaba was the largest distributor of Bitcoin miners in the world. So there was a Chinese company that was the largest manufacturer called Bitmain. When China, basically made everybody get out of Bitcoin mining, that's not really what happened. They just spun off the portion of Bitmain that was actually doing the mining operations into a company called BitDeer, which is actually got its largest facility right here in Texas, in a little town called Rockdale, Texas. They have a very large Bitcoin industrial level Bitcoin mining facility there. But no, Alibaba was the one where people, when you hear these stories about college kids and and people, setting up a mining, a mining thing in their home, probably 90% of the time they were acquiring those miners from Bitmain through Alibaba. So, this has been part of the plan for a long, long time. If you look at who the primary investors were in Alibaba, kind of as it went to go public, you'll find that there was a private equity firm called New Horizon. New Horizon is what they call a princeling private equity firm. The founder of the firm was the son of the last premier of China before President Xi. So, and they, I think, 5x their investment with that kind of going public thing. I'm sure they still probably hold a material amount of Alibaba shares now, Ant Financial. So, interesting story that they're going to split. Morgan Stanley has said that when they do the split, that the 6 companies separately should go from being worth $257 billion to about $530 billion, or $200 a share, which is that's material. Just by kind of re-scrambling the egg, we double the market cap. It's over double, right?
Wow. And do you still think there's a connection between the interests of Alibaba and kind of what we see in the XRP payments world? I know the Alipay is obviously everywhere, but like the XRP community has been very interested in Alibaba for a while, as have you. Do you still think that it's kind of a relevant thing for today?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where the tracks are laid. People need to do some diligence on Bitcoin, who the largest Bitcoin miners are, who's the ultimate owners of those companies, and it's all publicly available information. It's not that hard to find. You can pull up BitDeer's filing right off the SEC.gov website and start looking at that, and it'll tell you all you need to know. The information's a little dated now, so the reason they had filed an information statement with the SEC is they were undertaking a go public merger with a SPAC called Blue Safari Acquisition Corp. And so it's basically in connection with that deal where they were going to go public, but ultimately, because of what happened in the market in 2022, they did not successfully complete, at least it was never disclosed, that they successfully completed that go public. And I think in September of this past year, the kind of primary owner of or primary executive of BitDeer was looking to raise a private fund of I think $250 million to go and acquire other Bitcoin mining operations and further kind of reconsolidate that operation. So it's very much a Chinese operation.
All right, we kind of got into some heavy things. Should we have a little fun and play our meme game?
Yes, let's do memes.
All right, let's go for our memes. All right, we got 4 memes today. I realized last week when we did 6 that we like to tie this to the poll on Twitter, and Twitter only lets you have a maximum of 4 poll choices. So, all right, Jimmy, you go first with your...
I'm first? Okay. So the first one I have is the Monopoly money meme.
Oh, okay. All good.
Did you want me to do that? So it's a comparison of a dollar, a fiat dollar, and a monopoly dollar. And it says the only difference between these two notes is your belief that one has more value than the other. Obviously, they're both just pieces of paper with a number on it. So this is a funny one to me. This was really brought home to me. There's these toys you can buy that are plastic pennies, and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 50 of these pennies in the bag, and so that would be like 50 cents. And I think the the last time I saw one of these things, it was like, $5.65 to buy a bag of pennies. So the plastic pennies were actually worth more than the pennies.
When we discussed intrinsic value, that was something you sent me to sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. There you go.
All right. My first meme is going to be amusing to the XRP community. It is our dear friend Gary Gensler saying, which cryptocurrencies are securities? And his answer is yes. Now, he has not really come across as a friend to the crypto world, especially the XRP community in his, but I think that is broadening as he's gone after ETH recently as a security. I think what happened with Library was just despicable, and we might see that increase even more. Yeah,
it is despicable. It's also been coming with that type of thing. So the Library, what came out, I think it was this week, is I'm not sure if it was James Phelan or John Deaton that released that transcript where the CEO of Library was just basically saying, you can't tell me anything that I can do. Said, I'll bankrupt the company. I'll give you everything. And there's nothing that can be done to where you'll say, yeah, that's enough. That's not a security in this thing. So that's been a debacle. It's also come up in the Voyager bankruptcy case as well, that the SEC has been trying to retain this like securities claim optionality, and the bankruptcy judge is not having it. Is very upset with the SEC for basically saying you're not making any rules, but you want, and I have to give an order that says these things have certain value, and you're going to basically try to claim that my order is invalid. Is like, I can't let you do that. So he's very upset with them, and rightfully so. So hopefully Judge Torres is getting an earful of this type of stuff that's going on and is starting to see this more clearly for what it is.
Another sad thing that came out in that transcript release around Library was Jeremy Kauffman said that 3 years ago, the SEC had told him that they were going to shut Library down. Like,
bankrupt.
Yeah, they were going to bankrupt. It worked. And that's right, so terrible that a government regulator, instead of supporting and helping innovation, said, we're not going to let you do this. And if you there's a lot of crypto businesses, there's thousands of these tokens. One good question is, why Library? Why were they singled out of all the other companies that potentially could have followed a similar trajectory and released a token, used some of the money to buy stuff, build stuff, whatever? I do believe that decentralized media is a big threat to the powers that be. And they have a great system right now where they can control what topics we're allowed to discuss and how those conversations are managed. And Library via Odyssey, I think, was a real threat to that. If it had taken off and there was no curation of the topics we could discuss, it's a serious problem for people that want us to think a certain way.
Yeah. Well, look at what's happening with the TikTok matter that we discussed earlier in the program. This is a real thing. That they're not only, it's worse than picking winners and losers. They're trying to dictate what we can think, and that is that's bad. All right, next one. Last week we had the inverse Kramer discussion, where I think most people are starting to know that basically whatever Jim Cramer on CNBC predicts, it's almost every time going to go the exact opposite. But there's this great meme, another inverse Kramer meme, where there's a Jim Cramer from September of 476, and Rome is burning, and he's like, "I'm bullish on Rome. Bye, 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 bye."
He's almost gotten to the point where it's like a caricature. Like, I don't know how anyone takes him seriously, considering there's even an ETF fund, right? Inverse Kramer fund, where
inverse Kramer fund, that pissed him off good. Yeah. And then recently, it's been, I think, within the past week or 10 days, he kind of showed up intoxicated on the program. Really? He was like slurring his words really bad, and it was like this very bizarre thing. Yeah, it was going around. I'll have to dig that up and send it to you. What's the next one?
All right, number 4. This is a March Madness inspired meme, timely considering we're kind of at the end of March as recording this. And it shows a bracket for the banking system collapse, where all of these other banks, a couple of them have already collapsed: SVB, Signature, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank. Last week we were pretty sure that Deutsche Bank was on its way out. It seems like it's kind of hanging in there, even though the massive derivatives exposure, I still think, has a lot of people nervous. Now, this bracket, which, by the way, I did not pick these choices, shows JP Morgan, yet again, leader of the banking cartel, winning. So we'll see how it plays out.
Winning all the money, right?
All the money. Yes.
Yeah, it's been interesting. First, there's a hilarious meme, and poor Wells didn't make it. Sorry, California. But there was an article that came out that since the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, that the big banks, like the big four, have had new deposits of $120 billion in basically a week to 10 days. And small banks have basically lost $108 billion in deposits. So people are going to these smaller banks, the ones that Janet Yellen basically said that she wouldn't do anything about. And they're taking their money out, and they're starting to put them. It's like this melt up process that's going on. But if these issues that we were talking about earlier, Sandman and all this stuff were to come to pass, it's just kicking the can down the road a month. I mean, it's just delaying the inevitable.
Right. I mean, moving away from the fiat money system means the role of banks is going to change dramatically. Like if we have less money printing via loans, which that's one of the ways that money is introduced into supplies anytime a new loan is issued. If that kind of goes away or changes dramatically, I think the role of banks will become very different, maybe in a very good way.
In a good way, yeah. Isn't it PoliSign that's got a motto that's like "Make banking boring again" or something like that? And I think
actually Elizabeth Warren even came out and said that this week.
She did.
Yes.
Well,
and I don't think she's a real friend to any of us.
Yeah. She's a friend to the banks. That's for sure. Yes. All right. Well.
All right.
Everybody needs to go vote.
Go vote. What do you want to vote for?
The memes.
Oh. All right. Yes. I'll put a poll on Twitter to vote for your favorite memes. And all right. So I guess we're going to meet you back here next Friday. Hopefully we'll have some great news. I'm excited to do a podcast once where we have all this awesome news to share everybody. It's been kind of a little dark the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, won't it be fun? Yeah, maybe we'll have to change the lighting and go with like brighter colors or something.
That's true. Maybe we need pinks and purples.
Pinks and purples. There you go. Pastels. All right, Molly. Have a great weekend. Okay. All right. Ciao.